Alright guys, a new video for you here today. Wanted to do one, it was a request for a Vnav deep dive or Vnav path versus Vnav speed and mitigation procedures. And what I took that to mean is you're doing a arrival into an airport on a star. Let's say it could be with crossings or it could be a descent via, and maybe ATC gets you high or forgets about you. Or maybe you make a mistake and you don't spin your MCP altitude window in, or you're not in VNAV path, you're not paying attention, you don't have the crossing restrictions in, something. Of course, if it's ATC's fault, if they get you high or leave you high or forget about you, they'll oftentimes give you relief. And you may have to say, hey, listen, we can't make that crossing. We're going to be high at that fix. And usually they'll just say, do your best rate or do your best. They'll give you relief for that. Or worst case scenario, they'll just break you off the star and give you a descent and maintain and then vector you back on, that sort of thing. If it's your fault, you're going to have to do your best. Try to show you some ways of how you can do your best in terms of, I made the mistake, I need to get down, I can't get relief, let's say. I want to go over a couple different stars with you and some of the different ways that you can make this happen. Your non-profiled stars, well, this is a profiled star. This is still a descent via here in the Shane 2 into O'Hare. The reason I want to show you this one, though, is that there's no speeds on it whatsoever. And if there's no speeds, you don't have a speed restriction, maybe in a box, and I'll show you on one of these other stars that there's a speed restriction in the box where it says, descend via Mach number until intercepting 280 knots. Something like that. That's still a speed restriction that would apply to the entire star, as opposed to having speed restrictions at each fix. But since there's nothing on here and there's no speeds, the Shane 2 into O'Hare will still be a descent via. Of course, you need to verify all these fixes and altitudes in your FMC to make sure that you're going to make those descent crossings. The bottom altitude, of course, is Shane, which is the one and only fix altitude that I care about if I'm on this Kirksville transition, because you can see these other fixes here are all at or above. So if I'm across this at 35,000 feet, 30,000 feet, 28,000 feet, that's perfectly fine as long as I make Shane at 12,000 feet. If they forgot about me here and I was still over B forward, we'll say here at 30,000 feet, and then they said descend via the Shane 2, well, all I got to do is spin 12,000 feet in. In that case, I'm probably going to be in VNAV, speed breaks out, open the speed window, roll it up to say 300, 320 knots even, and you can get a pretty incredible descent rate, not only with the increase of the airspeed, but also the speed breaks out. If you think about it, an idle descent in an aircraft, if you go faster, what does the nose of the aircraft do? It pitches over, increases the descent rate, which will help you get down to that altitude. And of course, if you have the speed brakes on top of that, you're adding the drag, you're just going down that much faster. Another example, the Angel 4, you can see in this red box, speed restriction, descend via Mach number until intercepting 280 knots, maintain 280 knots until slowed by the star. So, if you're crossing Gleason here at 280 between 30 and 24, typical transition from Mach to indicate is around 29,000 feet. So you're probably going to be doing your Mach number until you cross Gleason at 280 knots. And then, of course, it's going to be Angel in a window here of 24 to 19 at 280 knots. Can at or above 17, or Con, I guess it's like James Con, at or above 17,000, 280 knots. Boyle at or above 14,000. And Circus, then when you would slow to 270 and with a window there of 12 to 14, your little green bubble on your ND is just going to be a few miles east of Circus. You don't have to slow from 280 to 270 knots there for Circus. What LA unfortunately does to you a lot is asks you, even inside of Gleason here, they'll say, slow to 250 knots. And so the problem that it then is, as you can imagine, your FMC is programmed and the profile is programmed for a 280 knot descent. So if ATC says slow to 250, they're going to leave you high on path. So they'll either have to give you relief for the altitudes, or you'll have to just do your best. And it's usually not a problem. But you are going to have to do, obviously, the speed brake. If you're trying to slow down and go down at the same time, the only option you have is the speed brake. So in that case, you're going to have to pop the speed brake out, and you're going to do one of two things for the speed. Either go to the Vnav descent page and put it in the descent page, and I'll show you where that goes here. If it was 280 knots, which actually I need to do for my Denver star here anyway, what you'd have to do is go into the descent page and then change this number here to 280 knots. And that's how you're going to basically do the 280 in the descent transition. You can also bump this to 250, pretty standard. Your only other option would be then to open the speed window and roll it back to 250 knots. That's your only option. I'm going to go ahead and set a lower altitude here since my top of descent is coming up and I don't want to get behind on what I'm trying to do for you here today. So those are your only two options in terms of slowing down, and of course you're going to need the speed brake because obviously if I can't exceed 280 knots or 250 knots, I have a speed restriction. The only option I have is my speed brake. Now I purposely picked the Clash 4 today going into Denver. Now it does say speed restriction 280 knots, descend via 280 knots, Mach number, or 280 knots until 280 knots, or until slowed by the star. But you can see way out here, Kiss, Dillon, Whalen at or above 30, Lincoln, Clash. There's no speed restrictions out here, so my speed restriction is 280 knots, and that's why we put it in the descent page just now as we did. Now I'm going to show you a couple things here. I don't have to slow again until I hit Everly here at 250 knots between 12 and 15,000 feet. So what we're going to do is we set our lower altitude in Vnav, and it's got a predicted path there, top of descent across Whalen at or above 30,000 feet. The next thing that it's really looking at is Clash between 22 and 19. But we're going to purposely only descend to 30,000 feet. And I'm going to purposely get high at this next fix. Now as it's doing that, let's look at a few things. We're at 30, going down to 30,000 feet in our MCP altitude window. We're in Vnav path. The speed window is closed. We're in Vnav path. And what do we got here? Let's not overspeed. That would be a little embarrassing. Little management. Anyway, we're slightly high on path, 100 feet, getting closer. Even though the aircraft is a little fast, it is pitching over with the speed brake helping out here. And of course you can see also the deviation indicator here. Now that we're back on path, we'll go and get rid of the speed brake. This thing does tend to get high on you, so you just got to kind of keep an eye on it. Also, in my descent page, our leg here is Lincoln, but what's it looking at in terms of descent? 19 to 22 at Clash. On the descent page, it shows right here, shows the speed that it's trying to maintain because we put that in there, and now we're obviously, on the star in our descent, so 280 knots is what it's looking at here. Clash at 19,000 feet. That's the next thing that it's looking at out here in the path. So, now, do I know what it's going to try to achieve here? 19 or 22 at Clash? I don't know, but I can see Clash at 19 is 3,000 feet per minute. If I'm doing roughly 3,000 feet per minute, you got a pretty good. You can probably assume that it's going to intercept or hit Clash at 19,000 feet. But as long as you're inside that window, that's all you really care about. Now I'm going to go ahead and level off at 30,000 feet here. You're going to see that I'm going to get high. Now the real airplane does not slow like that. It actually will stay at 280 and it'll stay at the speed. If you get high, that's your problem. Now, let's get rid of the speed brake. No, I guess it already was. Okay, so now, maybe they only descend you to 30,000 feet because, well, let's say they said, just maintain 300 for traffic. All right, so you do that. Now the problem is you're clear of the traffic, and then they come back and they say descend via the Clash 4 arrival. You're like, okay, well, great. Now you left me high. So we'll go ahead and spin 9,000 feet in here. And you can see it's starting to descend, or it should. I might have to pop the altitude intervention button just to keep it going down. Let's go ahead and close the window. Altitude intervention. Now it goes into Vnav speed. And the reason is because it's so high on path, it cannot achieve the path. That's basically what it's telling me. It's going to its idle descent. It's in Vnav speed. So what's it going to do? It's going to do an idle descent at 280 knots with complete disregard to the path. The only way I can get back onto path in this case, because I'm speed restricted at 280 knots, is to bring the speed brakes out. That's the only thing that I'm going to be able to do. Will I make clash between 22 and 19? I don't know. Let's go ahead and look at this here. It says clash at 19,000 feet. I need 4,180 feet per minute. I'm doing now 4,200 feet per minute. I will make clash at 19. To be legal for the descend via, all I really need is 22,000 feet, right? What I could do is come here, pop that in, and see I really only need 2,690 feet to be legal. I will be high on the path if I cross clash at 22, but I'm legal. So the aircraft is looking to cross clash at 19,000 feet. So, and I can delete that if I want to. I can actually put anything I want here. But we'll put it back to what it's looking at. Now I'm getting close to path here. Path is coming back in. Watch the Vnav speed, because once it gets back onto path and it says, okay, I can achieve this path again, instead of pitching for speed, I'll pitch for the path. You'll see it goes back to Vnav path. Again, in Vnav speed, it's pitching for the airspeed with disregarding the path. In Vnav path, it will pitch for the path and it will disregard the speed. It could get fast on you. That's when you get those messages, drag required, that sort of thing. Because even in an idle descent, it can sometimes get fast on you. So watch here, we're going to intercept our path again. There it's back into path. It now says, okay, I can achieve this path. I'm on speed. The window's not open. We can dump the speed brake. And now we're back on path. And I made it. Not only that, you can see I'm easily going to make clash at 22,000 feet. I'm out of 230. It's starting to get a little high again. So as I said, you do have to do a little bit of monitoring and just do keep giving it a little bit of help. So then our next fix is going to be Everly at 250 knots. You see the decel point there between 15 and 22. Now, let's purposely, we're going to disregard the speed, so bear with me. Let's set this to 19,000 feet. And the aircraft does not come down out of the sky quite as good in real life as it does in the sim here with just the speed brake. Speed brake's pretty incredible in this thing. The brakes are way overpowered too. But anyway, we've got clash. We made it somewhere between 19 and 22,000 feet. Now what I want to show you here is if I did not have a speed restriction. And I'm going to show you that I can get back on path without even using the speed brake if I don't have a speed restriction. So we're going to go to 19,000 feet here. We're going to level off, let it get high again. I'm going to keep it at 280 knots because, as I said, the real aircraft will not slow out of that airspeed. It will maintain that speed. It won't slow all the way down to up bug like the Pmdg does. So there's 20 for 19. It says reset MCP altitude. It knows it's going to end up high if I don't do something. At that point, I'm probably bugging ATC. Hey, you got lower. To which they'd say, yep, descend via the clash for arrival. But again, I'm going to purposely get high here. Like I said, I've got the window open so that it doesn't slow on me. I'm actually going to get several thousand feet high here. Again, this may be, okay, cross Everly at 190 for traffic. Alright, so we'll just change that. 190. There we go. Execute. So I'm at 19,000 feet. So actually now it thinks I'm low on path because it was looking at that window as opposed to just 19,000 feet. So steep descent after Everly. Yeah, because it would have been looking at the lower altitude of that window of 15,000 feet. So now it's going to put me high. Our next fix would be record at or above 13. I don't really care about the at or aboves. All I would really care then about is Townsend between 12 and 13. So I could actually pop in Townsend. Let's go 13,000 feet. We're just kind of playing around right now. And I see right now to cross Townsend at 13,000 feet, I need a 3-degree bearing, or 2.9, and almost 2,000 feet per minute. Path is coming in here because I'm at 19. I told it I wanted it at 19. But here, as we cross Everly, we're going to end up getting high for crossing Record or Townsend. But I'm going to do this on purpose. Again, bear with me here. Speed window's open so it doesn't slow. Reset MCP altitude, the same warnings, same cautionary messages. Again, remember, we're going to ignore the decels here. I'm not going to worry about the speeds, because I could even ask for speed relief on the descent, and that's going to help me tremendously. So what we're looking at now here is towns in between 12 and 13. I'm obviously high, getting higher. There's 1,300 feet. So now we're going to go ahead and say, all right, descend via. We'll spin 9,000 feet in here. I'm going to close that speed window, hit altitude intervention. You can see that it's looking for 250. Now, is it going to be able to slow down and go down? Nope, absolutely not. What if I didn't have that speed restriction? Let's keep it at 280. Yeah, it's going to pitch over, idle descent, maintain 280. Let's see what kind of descent rate we get here once it stabilizes. So the town's in 13,000 feet, which is the high end of that window between 12 and 13. I need 3,897 feet per minute. Idle descent, it's not typically that good. Now it is trying to achieve the 280, so it's sort of pitching over. Once it stabilizes, we'll see what we get. I'm going to think about 2,500 feet per minute. There's 18,000. We'll just go ahead and... Not going to run the checklist, of course. I got other things to do here. That's not what this is about. But you can see at 280 knots, I'm still high on the path. So what is the other thing that I can do? I can open the window. Again, if I had no speed restriction, if you have a speed restriction, your only option is the speed brake. If I have no speed restriction, open the window, roll it up to a higher airspeed, and look at this descent rate. Will I be able to achieve 4,500 feet per minute? Yeah, probably. I absolutely can if it actually pitches all the way over to 320 knots. If I throw the speed brake on top of that, we'll really come down. Now, obviously, this would not be comfortable for passengers. You wouldn't want to do this. You could probably get away with one or the other. There's really no reason that you would ever probably need to do both. That's obviously just for demonstration purposes. As I said, open the speed window with no speed restrictions. If there are speed restrictions, use the speed brake. That's all you can really do. So I'm out of 13,000 feet for Townsend. Past Townsend, I'm now looking at Pinball at 11,000 feet. Let's get rid of that. 4,577 feet per minute. Am I going to make it? Maybe just barely. Going to be a couple hundred feet high. There, it went back into Vnav speed again. It said I can't achieve that. At or above 10,000 feet. Path is coming in. I'm going to achieve that. Back into the path. Now, obviously, had I had the speed restriction, this would have been a real mess. So you'd have to get relief on something like this. But as I said, if ATC did it to you, they're going to have to help you out. The point of the video is, if, and I'm going to go ahead and pause this because I'm basically done with it. If you have a speed restriction on your star or speed restriction at the fix, the only thing that you can really do is use the speed brake. In the case of our Shane arrival, where they said descend via the star, and there's no speed restrictions at any fixes, or that magenta box that said descend via Mach number until 280 knots or something like that, you can open the speed window, increase the airspeed. In an idle descent, it increases the vertical descent rate to try to catch back up to the path. You saw what it did as far as Vnav speed versus Vnav path. We talked about that, what it's trying to achieve or what it's doing. Of course, you do always have to abide by the 250 knots below 10,000 feet. Don't ever forget that. If you can't make it, tell ATC. If it's their fault, they'll have to give you relief. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the Discord or your instructors, and I hope that helps. I'll see you later.